Well, guys, I had an exciting yesterday, Friday. What was it, 26th? 27th? Really don't know. Again, I don't pay attention to dates, which I should a little bit. Today's the 27th, Saturday, so yesterday was the 26th. And I had an interesting day, which started actually the night prior. Hold on just a minute, I want to get something here real quick. Because while I'm telling you about my story, I figure I'll do another part. It's either part 6 or 7 of that antenna thing I was talking about. Hold on, I gotta get one more mount. Sorry I wasn't ready for you. But as usual, I wasn't ready, so I figured I'd just walk around and waste everybody's time. So anyway, had an interesting day. Thursday night, well, for about the past, I don't know, on and off, for maybe the past year, every now and then I have a problem getting that one deep breath, you know, that cleansing breath, that satisfying over the hump, over the fence breath. And it wasn't really affecting me too much. It was discomforting at times, and it wasn't all the time. So when I had gone to the doctor back in March, you know, and I have told them about it before because they ask, you know, and I told them, well, listen, doc, you know, I got this little issue here with, sometimes I just can't get that breath. And so he checks the back, you know, breathe in, breathe out. Well, you're not wheezing. Do an x-ray. Well, your chest, your lungs look good. That's probably related to the medication that you're on, because a couple of the medications that I'm on, one of the side effects is heavy breathing, difficulty breathing. Okay, well, this is nice to know. I have 2 of those meds that I'm on that have that same side effect, 2 different medications. So anyway, I cut back on one of them. I informed my doctor, my heart doctor, that I cut back on one of the medications. One of them was called metformin. No, I'm sorry, metformin's for diabetes. Metoprolol, tartar. And I was taking 50 milligrams twice a day. Now, that's for the heart. That helps, I guess, keep the heart in rhythm. And one of the side effects is naturally, you know, heavy chest, you know, can make breathing difficult, you know, stuff like that. And then there's another one. However, I called the heart doctor. I told her I was thinking about cutting back to 25 milligrams twice a day instead of 50 because of that reason. And I've talked to her as well about this breathing problem. And, you know, they kind of played it off. They checked the heart, and they said everything seems to be okay with the heart. You know, did the stress test last year, and it came through with flying colors. And, you know, the heart doesn't show any damage. You know, I've got the stent, but there's no damage. So, you know, everything checks out okay. So it must be medicated related. Okay. Now, I'm a pretty calm guy. Things don't bother me, that I'm aware of anyway. So, you know, I kind of just, okay, that's what it is. Well, Thursday night, I was starting to have a little bit more of a problem catching that breath. Now, for you that know what I'm talking about, that cleansing breath, that one that kind of makes your lungs feel good, you know. If you ever experience a point to where you can't feel that, or you feel that like you're not breathing, but yet you are, you're not getting dizzy, you know, you're not getting, you know, well, short of breath, you feel like you are, you feel like you're starving for air, but you're not getting dizzy or anything. So you kind of have to say, okay, you know, maybe I'm just hyperventilating. You don't know what it is. So you kind of have to continue to tell yourself that you are breathing. and try to work through this, because you know it can very easily become a big deal if you start to panic. And if you feel you're not breathing, well, sometimes that will put you into a panic mode. Now, for a while, I would find by just getting up and walking around outside, you know, trying to find things to do, taking sips of cold water and stuff like that, tend to help me a little bit. But anyway, Thursday night was coming into a night to where it just wasn't working. And I said, you know, I've been dealing with this for almost a year. It seems to be getting worse. Why? You know, why? Well, you know what I did? I drove over to on Friday morning, about 7 o'clock or so. I drove over to the firehouse here in the town that I live in. And as I was driving over there, I called 911, told them that I had a problem breathing, and that I was pulling into the firehouse on the east side parking lot. And, you know, at this point, they come out and they brought the ambulance over because I was right there. Paramedics came out and such. And they started talking to me and, you know, asking me questions. You know, they stick the needle in your hand. That's automatic. Oxygen, you know, in the nose and stuff like that. And my throat was very scratchy, dry, and felt like it was closing up because I was looking for thirst. I was looking for water. Now, they really didn't want to give me any water, but I told them, listen, I want water. I'm not going to gulp it down. I'm not going to take any more than a capful each time I take one. I says, I have to have water in my throat. It doesn't feel right. So after that, they gave me a bottle of water, and naturally, I was just taking little sips. I get to the emergency room, they take me in almost instantly. Now, if you have insurance, and even if you don't, if you have a problem, sometimes it's better to take the ambulance because you get seen a little quicker than if you were to admit yourself. Because if you're not feeling comfortable enough to where you're going to have to find parking and then deal with all the paperwork before you even get to see anybody, by taking the ambulance, you get to see everybody as the paperwork goes through. You know, they're asking you questions, but first your health is more important, not so much the paperwork. The paperwork is naturally important to them because they want to get paid, but that comes in through the course of them taking care of you. So they sent me for x-rays. They drew blood. They sent that out to see if the heart and everything was okay. And everything was checking out okay. So they're saying to me they don't see any problems. But they would recommend that I see a pulmonary expert because there may be something that they're not seeing. And because I'm supposed to be using the, I guess they call it an EPAP. You know, it's a breathing apparatus for at night. Well, I have one because I was borderline. I took the sleep apnea thing, the test, and the doctor says I was yay, nay. So he says it doesn't hurt. So all right. But I found when I put that on, because it's always pumping air in, it wasn't allowing me to breathe out and breathe normally. And with this little issue that I was having, that was only making it worse. So I stopped using it. I just didn't use it because I'd have to put it on, breathe in, take it off to breathe out. Well, I'm never going to sleep if I'm putting this thing on and off my face every breath. So I decided just not to use it. Well, anyway, they recommended me see a pulmonary expert. So, yeah, they released me 11 o'clock yesterday, Friday morning. And they recommended that they get a hold of my doctor, my general, and my heart doctor as well. And that my general will make all the arrangements for me as far as getting my appointments with the pulmonary. So I called her as soon as I was released. Actually, I was outside waiting for my wife to pick me up. And she says that they're going to make an appointment for me for next week to see a pulmonary. Well, I explained to her that I hadn't really slept because it's stopping me from sleeping, and I really don't want to have to go through this discomfort and being awake all weekend until she finds me a doctor. So she worked her little miracles because the doctor I'm with is a pretty well-known doctor, and everybody kind of helps one another within that group. So she had gotten me an appointment for 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon to see a pulmonary expert just about a mile from my home, which is great. Nice guy. I get in there at 4 o'clock. They asked me immediately when I entered the office, the reception area, if I needed oxygen, you know. And I said, no, I'm okay, you know. As long as I'm not laying down or I can stand up, you know, sometimes even sitting would give me a problem. But I says, no, but if you just see me wandering around, don't worry about it, you know. Okay. So I go in and I'm being tested. So if you haven't been tested, first of all, it doesn't hurt. They're not sticking anything in you or anything like that. You're putting your mouth over a machine, an object that goes into your mouth, and you're breathing into this machine that has a thing that goes up and down with your breathing. And they ask you to breathe, and then they ask you to breathe in as far as you can. Hold it for a second, and then they tell you to breathe out as hard and as much as you can. And the thing goes up when you do that, and it's all being measured on a computer. And that's fine. And then they say, okay, and then take your mouth off this machine. You talk a little bit, they're asking you questions, you know, how's the weather, you know, it's just, well, they're waiting for the machine to recycle. Then you do it again. Well, you end up doing that about 3 times. And then you do it again with the machine on, but not actually pumping any air or doing anything, because they just want to see what your normal breathing is. So they tell you, okay, you stick this thing in your mouth, the machine that you're hooked up to, and you just sit there and breathe. You know, and meanwhile, you know, they're talking to you, and you're looking at things on the wall, and it goes on for maybe a half a minute to a minute. Then they'll say, hold your breath for 10 seconds. And then they say, okay. And that's basically the test. And it's all computerized. Then I seen the doctor, and the doctor says my lungs are strong. There's nothing wrong with my lungs. So they came to the conclusion that I was having a panic attack. So I said, well, wow. You know, I'm 66 years old here, you know. There's nothing bothering me that I'm aware of. There's nobody chasing me that I'm aware of. There would be no reason for me to have this panic attack. And if I'm having this panic attack, why has it lasted for almost a year, you know, and it suddenly got a little worse, you know, and I'm having this problem, you know, and, you know, because your lungs, you know, your pulmonary and things also go along with your heart. Now, it's important for those of you who have a machine and actually need a machine and you don't use the machine, well, it's important that you start learning to deal with it and learn how to use it. And if you're having a problem using it, they can reprogram it to fit you so that it'll breathe in and out with you or just in on you. And a certain level, like number 4, 5, 6. Now mine was set for number 4, was the lightest that the machine can go, because it was kind of like, yeah, I need it, but yeah, I don't. But it ain't gonna hurt, that type of thing, you know. So, and it's not always a breathing issue that causes it. Snoring, waking up like you're not breathing, that type of thing. You know, that means you stopped breathing during your sleep, and that's no good for you. This can actually cause a problem with your heart, so much so that you would have to have a transplant. So it's more serious than people actually take it to be. That's one of the reasons why the doctors are so much involved in trying to find out if you need it or not. But anyway, back to my disorder, my panic, I don't know what you want to call it, anxiety attack. Who really knows? So anyway, I'll get back to him in a minute. So anyway, I got an appointment to see my doctor, my general. I've got an appointment to see my heart doctor on the 8th of, I'm sorry, no, on the 10th of July. And see what she has to say, just to make sure that everything is still working properly there, because the lungs seem to be fine. All right, he says they're strong. There's nothing wrong. There's no damage. There's nothing wrong with my lungs. My lungs, now I used to smoke, but I had given it up 19, 20 years ago. I used to smoke 5 packs a day. But I was up almost 18 hours, 20 hours a day at work. So I had some long days at times, plus being around lead at a long period of time, you know, both indoors and out. Even though you have the ventilation on the indoors, you got to remember, I was involved with firearms for 40 plus years, at the range every day, you know, so it was one of these things to where there could have been a lot wrong with me. But my lungs are as clean as anybody else's that never smoked and that jogged and did everything they normally do. So there doesn't seem to be any problems. The x-rays show it, the pulmonary experts show it, heart doctor shows good. So what is the reason for this breathing issue? So they come to the conclusion, the doctor that I've seen so far, the conclusion is, I haven't seen the heart doctor yet, but according to all the records and all the tests that have been done throughout the year, including the test that was just done, there's nothing wrong with me. So they kind of figured it's got to be anxiety or panic attack or something like that. So he recommended, he actually prescribed to me, and that's another reason why I'm doing this, not just for this. Right? He actually prescribed to me something called Klonopins, something like that. 0.5 milligram. All right, so that's 0.5. And he recommended for me to even just take half of one just to try it. Well, again, I haven't slept for a while. So last night, somewhere around 7 o'clock, I took half of one. Well, it worked. Now, I went to sleep, but I don't know if it was the 0.25 milligrams that I took of this Klonopin or Klonopin or whatever it was. I don't know if that was the reason, or was it just the reason is because I was dead tired to start with, and I was finally able to breathe properly, and that was it. So I just, you know, went to sleep. So we really don't know. So tonight, I'll take the other half because I've well rested. All right, I've got a good night's sleep. I feel pretty good today. I'm breathing okay today. You know, and usually during the day I am. You know, I'm pretty decent. Every now and then I'll have to gasp for that air, but as a rule, I'm doing pretty good. Now, I don't really mean to be eating up all this time on you, but it may be important to somebody because of the things that I'm going through may help you if you're experiencing the same things. You know, it's a very uncomfortable feeling, even though you are breathing, to think that you're not. All right. So, the bottom line is, as of today, I am prescribed a 0.5 Klonopin. I guess it's a generic volume. And I am breaking them in half, and I am only taking a half at night, you know, when it's getting time to gear down, you know, 8, 9, 10 o'clock type of thing. And if I do need something through the day, just take the other half. So, but anyway, that's where I'm at, and the saga continues. Now, when I was in the ambulance, naturally they want to know all your medications that you're on. The hospital that I was brought to was Yale University, which is one of the best hospitals in the country. They say if it wasn't for the location of the hospital, it would be the best hospital in the country, but that's hearsay anyway. But they are a good hospital. And 2 of my doctors are actually part of that hospital. So all you have to do, if you were in the medical field at that point, is look up my chart, as I can do as well on the internet. I can look up my charts at any time. Look up my chart, and you will see everything that I'm taking, everything that I'm taking at this point, you know, and everything that I've been to the doctors for since they actually inputted all this information into the computer. So it's a pretty good system. But they want to ask you anyway, you know, because they want to make sure you're not taking something that isn't there, if you know what I mean. And they don't care about your age, you know, and I find that kind of, I really got insulted, you know, and I told them that, you know, because I'm not taking anything, you know, I mean, you know, I assume, which I shouldn't, you know, if you look at me, you know, I mean, I'm a 66-year-old man, you know, relatively decent health, you know, there's no needle marks in my arms, you know, I'm not acting irrational or anything, you know, I mean, you know, my eyes aren't dilated, all kinds of crazy, I'm talking to you, right, you know, why would you even think something like that, you know, and I actually mentioned it to them, you know, I got insulted. Their demeanor changed once I told them that. You know, but, you know, I guess they have to treat everybody this way because there's a lot going on there in the world that I'm not seeing anymore. I guess apparently there's a lot of old-time junkies out there, you know, drug addicts. I mean, who knows? But if you are having those problems. So anyway, part of that was they asked me my med list that I was on, and I keep a med list with me. And I keep it, you know, where anybody can get to it, my wallet or my phone case, something like that. But when they opened it up, it kind of like fell apart because it was old. So what I had done was I put another med list together and I laminated it. So here, I'm just going to wing it by you. So, but it'd be a good point to, if you are taking meds, regardless of what they are or how mild they may be, even if you're taking that one baby aspirin every morning or something, it's a good idea to put a little list together, laminate it, and keep it on you. You may forget, and if they start looking, which they will, they'll find it, you know. So it's a good idea to do something like that. But anyway, I'm sorry it took so long before I even got to this, but I wanted to talk to you about this mount. This is a side body mount. And what happens is this is a weather gasket that goes on it. This is made to go on the side of a vehicle. In order to install this, you have to be able to get to the back side of the metal, the fender, or wherever you're putting it, because you have to install this from the back side. Once you've drilled the holes, the size of the holes that are in this plate that comes with it, and the top hole, the larger of the two, has to be a clean hole. You can't have any burrs anywhere, because the burrs will eventually start shorting out the system. Once you've drilled those holes, you put this in from the outside. This goes on the outside naturally. That's what houses and holds the antenna. Then you put the plate on from the inside. So it's going to be a good idea to have two people, or at least a very good masking tape, right, to hold this in place while you're doing this. Once this is on, then you're going to take this bushing, this fiberglass, nylon, whatever it may be, that has that little lip on it. Excuse me, guys. And that's going to go into that 1/2-inch hole, snap right through, and it's going to go, as you can see, if there was a fender or a piece of metal there, it would also go through that. That is isolating this stud from ground. Because again, this stud is the hot side. This stud is connected to this, which is where the antenna screws in. So once you've done that, then you take your wire, which is going to be a little different now because the wire on this isn't a screw-on plug. It isn't a PL259. It's more or less a spade lug type. So you're going to take your wire and you're going to have to strip it back a little bit. And again, I'm still using these old strippers. I ordered new ones, by the way. I just waiting for them to come in, which will probably be a week to 10 days, seeing that they're coming from California. And I'm in Connecticut. But because the price is right and I buy enough of them, enough of other things as well, it makes it beneficial for me to wait. So once you've stripped this back enough, there's a few ways you can do it. You can kind of push this like an old set of Chinese fingers, spread open back down in here, all right, so that you can kind of pop this other piece out through it by bending it through and up, or just unravel it like I'm doing. All right, and you want to make sure that you unravel it all the way down. Now let me show you the other way too, just in case you want to do it that way. Push it down like a Chinese finger. Get a little screwdriver or something and open this up. I'm opening it up so I'm actually seeing the piece in there. Hey Tuck, how you doing, buddy? And then once you get that open enough, you can kind of like just bend this and then open it up a little bit more around it. See what I'm doing? And I'm pushing it down. Now I can pull this right out. Now that's out. Now I still have that intact, and now we're like that. Now what I would do, I'm not going to install it, so I'm not going to put this wire on there, but what I would do is naturally wrap it. Now if you have a solder iron, it'd be a good idea to put a little tin on the end. You don't want to really tin the whole thing. You don't have to, nor do you want to take a chance of melting this nylon piece here, because you can very well easily melt that, and now you have a short. But if you do have a little, if you want, put a little tin on that and you'll be all set. Put a lug on it that's going to fit. Now that's the ground, so the ground is going to go on the lower one, the one without the isolator. Make sure your lug is a close fit. Alright, clip that onto that wire, solder it, clamp it, however it's going to be. You put it over that there, put whatever little hardware comes with it, in this case a lock washer and a nut, and we're going to tighten it down, but we don't want to make it real tight just yet. And then we're going to do the same thing with the tip. We're going to splice that back enough. We're going to put another lug that fits over it. We're going to crimp it, solder it. Doesn't hurt to do both. Now this one is what they call a heat shrink. This will shrink up around the wire to prevent any moisture to get into the connection. However, it's not going to stop moisture to get on here. So sometimes the heat shrink stuff really isn't worth it. It's wild. But the longer it is, and if the heat shrink does work, it'll help stable the wire in there so it doesn't bend and break off. So it can have its good side. But at that point, you do what you got to do with that. And then that would go on here with the wire. And then again, a lock, nut, and washer would go on. Now once that's on there, you do want to snug it down. But you got to watch out because this is plastic. You start making this real tight, you are going to snap this right out of the plastic. You're going to crack this and you've shot. You need a new mount. It's done. The same with the base. Alright, so you want to make them tight, but you're going to use a small wrench. You know, you want it more than finger tight. You want it so that you can't get it off with your hand, you know, and so it's a little like a finger tight, maybe another, you know, little schnuck. Just pay attention. Now also, what I used to do when I had my shop, because again I did have a shop for a number of years, I sold it and got tired of it. Then I opened a body shop for a while, put my brother to work. Now I was doing all this actually while I was still in firearm training. This is hollow, and when you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Inside, behind the weather gasket, it's hollow. If I knew that I had an appointment coming up and that you were going to be dropping off your vehicle the next day for me to install something like this, I would fill this up with silicone so this is solid inside. Now it doesn't help it, so if it really gets whacked it's going to break it, but it'll help it if the antenna starts to rock a little bit. That'll help support and hold it. So I used to fill that up with silicone and just let it be. You know, and it seems to work quite well. And I would tell customers that were coming in to buy this that they do have a tendency of breaking if you put too big of antenna on it, or if your antenna hits. Because if it's mounted on the side of your vehicle and the antenna hits it, it's going to make it snap. You follow? So I mention it to customers to, you know, put some silicone in there if they like. It's not needed, but it's recommended. Now also, oh, mommy's home. Also, when you have your antenna on it, if you're using a short antenna, that's one thing. However, if you can, it's a good idea to tie a piece of paracord to the antenna on a higher end someplace so it's supported, so that if the antenna gets hit, it's not going to be able to snap way back. It's just going to be able to move a couple of inches, because that'll also help keep this from snapping. You follow? So that's so much with that. So that's another type of mount. Again, the ground and the hot, and they must be isolated, and you must have a good ground. You can't put this on fiberglass. This is a trunk mount. This is at the other end of that wire that I was showing you. There will be a PL259 going on this with a 175 reducer if I decide to use it. Trunk mount is good. It lips on the trunk, and you have two Allen screws here that tighten down into the trunk, and that's where you get your ground from. That's lipped right onto the trunk, and it makes a nice tight fitting. Comes with a little gasket on it so it prevents any scratching from the top side, but that's it. And that's about the kind of ground you're going to need. If you ever have to ground an antenna and you got to run a ground wire, you're kind of wasting a lot of your time unless it's real heavy. That 1/4 inch is for this amount of space. So you got to figure, if I was going to make it a bigger space or have to add a ground wire, I would probably have to go 2-3 inches wide. I'd be buying a piece of brass plating, long brass grounding strapping, something like that, in order to achieve a proper ground. So groundings are important. Shorter the better, and the heavier the better. So that would be grounded on the trunk. Now this is the top part of this particular mount. This centerpiece is the hot, the rest of this is ground. This doesn't make a difference in much other than you like to have a brass ring because you're threading into brass. They do make these where the threading is plastic, and the next thing you know the plastic is cracking. So it's nice to have the brass embedded into the plastic. It helps. The center though, however, that's the hot, and that's spring loaded, and that touches that, as you can see the mark there from it. So when this screws on, that touches that. So the only thing that's touching that at this point, even though it's screwing on the ground, that's isolated. The center is the antenna. And that's how it works. Alright guys, catch you later.